Good morning. A Christian couple are threatening to take their 6-year-old son's school to a tribunal because another pupil sometimes comes to class as a boy and other times as a girl wearing a dress. Nigel and Sally Rowe have withdrawn their son from his Church of England primary, saying the authorities had acted without due regard to the best interests of pupils, had failed to consult other parents and had not respected their rights to bring up children with biblical values. 2 years previously, they'd taken his 8-year-old brother out of class when a pupil came out as transgender. Let's talk now to Nigel and Sally Rowe, and also with us Jane Fay, a campaigner for LGBT rights who transitioned in her 50s. And just to say, we're not naming the primary school deliberately to protect the various children involved. Nigel and Sally Rowe, thank you very much for talking to us. Thanks for coming on the programme. What were your concerns? Yeah. What were you worried about? What were you afraid of in terms of the effect on your son or the other children in the class? Presumably you don't know if the 6-year-old who was coming one day dressed as a boy and one day dressed as a girl had the professional assessments. And in terms of the effect on your children and the others in the class, kids at that age are really adaptable, aren't they? I'm still confused about what it is you were wanting to protect your son and the others in his class from.
Complex, isn't it?
Did that happen? Did anybody get chastised for addressing this fellow pupil in the wrong way?
Case of attacking or anything like that at all?
It doesn't sound like you're being very understanding. Have you met a trans child or a child that one day comes to school dressed as a boy and then perhaps the next as a girl? Have you talked to such a child? Let me bring in Jane Fay, who's an LBGT activist, campaigner, and transitioned in her 50s. Hello, Jane. Do talk to Sally and Nigel Rowe.
Yes, well, just straight across through the magic of television.
Yes.
Sorry, Nigel. Sally? Yes.
Sally, yeah.
Sally, yeah. What gender are your children? How do you know that? Isn't that a bit of an adult decision, which I think it's all about genitals, is it?
No,
well, then how do you know if you've... So it's what you are assigned at birth. For a trans child, they can't possibly know until they're 18, but your children magically know at age 6. Is that what it is? Well, you've just said that you don't know. It's an adult decision about gender.
It's physical.
Can I just add that I had this with Victoria earlier. There does seem to be a bit of confusion because there are 2 children involved, aren't there?
That's right.
One of them is 8. The school handled this very well. That child is transitioning and you get on with them, although I notice you disrespect them by calling them he. And the other child has just recently started, yes? And you're worried about bullying.
Well,
you said you're worried about bullying?
Bullying, yeah.
So you're worried your children might bully this child?
Taught our children to respect. You love your neighbour as yourself.
Just my own experience, both with my own family and with children with trans children, is that the children bullied tend to be those children. And they tend to be bullied because parents take the sort of view that you take. Very much, when parents tell their child not to accept another child, their children go out and bully. What I do know, having spoken to the parents of the 8-year-old this morning, which is not the child that you're talking about, that child went to bed last night scared. They said they didn't feel safe because of what you're doing, because you can't get a voice on national TV. This is not national... Oh, this is national TV, isn't it?
Should they be involved in this? It is an adult discussion.
You don't want this dialogue that the child can hear, and do you expect the child not to be watching the news, not to be watching Victoria, not to be watching...
We have no animosity whatsoever towards...
Can I ask, sorry to interrupt Mr and Mrs Rowe, if there had been a consultation, what would have been a good outcome for you if there had been a consultation? Yeah, and that may well have happened privately.
It's very likely to have happened. Schools are supposed to do that. How do you know that?
Sorry, and when you say worked through with experts in gender dysphoria, what do you mean? It's not a mental disorder. It's not a mental disorder. I mean, if you talk to, for example, the Tavistock Clinic, which is an NHS clinic for under 18s in this country, for children, young teenagers, young adults who have gender identity disorder, they will tell you it's not a mental disorder. And they take great... It's not a matter of opinion.
It's not a mental disorder.
It's not a matter of opinion. They are doctors, NHS doctors. Maybe a couple of comments before we wrap our conversation up. This is from Charles. He's emailed to say, I know it's really difficult to understand if you aren't trans, but when you are and when your internal identity is at odds with what the world sees and tells you, it's incredibly painful. Just being called a female name or a female pronoun for me as a child was painful. Yes, from as young as 6. Being told by your parents, school and society that you're not wrong just for being trans. Learning the lessons young is life-saving for so many and has no adverse effect on anyone else.
Okay.
Kim says, I really have problems trying to understand what the couple is saying. I certainly don't agree with what they've done, but they seem to be far less understanding and accepting than any child. Very un-Christian-like. And Nicola on Twitter says, it makes me cross. Parents are responsible for educating children too, and these are transferring their prejudice through the generations. It's disgraceful. Carl on Twitter, totally support the couple in withdrawing their child from the school. What happens now in terms of your relationship with the school and whether you want certainly your younger son to go back there?
So
I'm going to pause it there, but thank you so much for your time and for giving us so much time. We appreciate it. Thank you. Nigel and Sally Rowe. Jane Fay, LGBT activist. Final thought from you? A dialogue? Is there any dialogue to be had? What do you think?
Well, I'd love to have a dialogue. I'll just say in church yesterday, the gospel was talking about the supreme commandment being loving your neighbour as yourself. What I'm seeing here, if they didn't want this other child to feel unsafe, all they had to do was say no comment. What I'm seeing is an extremist Christian set, maybe not them, but Christian Concern, as extremist in its own way as people like ISIS. This has got to stop.
Thank you. Jane Fay.
We've done a lot of transgender interviews on here. Met a lot of children who have decided that that they are gender fluid, and a lot of parents who as well. The parents, I think, pretty much on the whole, I could say that never pushed their children into this. It was the child's choice to help them. It was the child that had the issue that they felt. I want to do this for me.
Who experience. People who experience...
Medical advice?
Well,
why medical advice? Why does the child who decides they're gender fluid need medical advice?
Well, I'm sorry, but all the other kids...
Can I make... Because obviously, you know, you made the decision to take both your children out and homeschool them because they were under a amount of stress. And I can understand that it might have been a shock that one day suddenly a boy comes in a dress and the name's changed. And without that understanding of what's happened, I can understand that that might have been an unusual thing to happen. But is this not part of the understanding that by doing this, there is greater understanding, and actually it could have been a chance to open up a conversation to educate, so it became more normal, so it wasn't a stressful situation. But they are at school, aren't they? I guess that's the thing.
It's a major part of that child's life. It's where they spend most of their time.
Change the pronoun, change the name.
There'll be a lot of people who are saying that children adapt remarkably well, if things are explained to them, then they understand very clearly. It's not an issue with the children, it's an issue with you. You're the ones that have the problem, not the children. What's
the answer then? Because if this child that is transitioning or deciding to explore or being fluid or whatever they decide to say, if they're going through this in their life, to keep other parents and other children happy, should they just be hidden away, taken to a school where they can go and wear what they want and just be...
You know, to do the best for their children.
Which is what that parent was doing,
yes,
I guess.
I agree.
I mean, that's what they would say. That would be their argument.
Absolutely, they would statistic that.
I don't think media's pushing it. I think media's recognising it for the first time.
It's the same sort of situation, you know, where as a child who years ago would have been terrified, chastised for coming out as gay. And maybe would you have been part of those parents who said, well, not in my school, because things move on, people change. Well, attitudes change. We're less medieval now than we used to be.